and giving God the praise for what he has allowed us to do, and giving us the strength for what he allowed us to do. Amen.
Thank you, Verlin, and thank you, Brother Hunt, for elaborating on that, because that's why I wanted to start there. I thought that was such a poignant point for us all kind of to take in and to remember. We might have heard it before many times, but I think it's always a good reminder, because there are so many different frustrations and different things that happen on a daily basis that can kind of take us out of, that spiritual aspect sometimes. So to always kind of be able to come back to that. And I wasn't sure if I was going to cover this part because, with time constraints, but I do want to now look at the bottom of page 196, where it mentions, I'm going to skip a little bit, but that second paragraph, it says, Jesus used parables about work to teach us how to grow spiritually. So our earthly work is not just some random thing. It is supposed to teach us, because that next paragraph says work is a spiritual activity. We are made in the image of God, who himself is a worker, a manager, a creator, a developer, a steward, and a healer. To be a Christian is to be a co-laborer with God in the community of humanity. I just thought that was so amazing. And then it follows up and says, work is a place to develop our character in preparation for the work we will do forever. So setting boundaries in the workplace can help us grow spiritually. So if there was any question about why we're talking about work and, this thing we go to every day to get paid and to be able to provide for our families, is because it has another aspect to it. It's not just work. When I, get dressed every day and, go put myself on a team screen or go to BP, it's an opportunity for me to represent the community of Christ, to be a Christian, to do great work and let people know that I represent more than me. So I just wanted to kind of follow up with that. Thank you again for kind of moving into that space. And again, I'm going to just ask Carlos to keep me honest on time, because I really don't know how much time I have, but I wanted to jump into a couple of the problems that they talked about, because I thought just a few of them were interesting. There are 9 of them, and I just want to cover a few. So the first one on page 197, it talks about problem number 1, getting saddled with another person's responsibilities. And I'm sure everybody on this line has had that happen at some point in their career. And basically the story here is that Hannah is an admin, and there's a gentleman by the name of Jack that has some responsibilities for running a training facility. And more as time goes by, Jack is asking Hannah to do his work. And at first, I think Hannah is okay with that. And then she started getting a little frustrated and losing energy around the happiness that she had at work doing her own responsibilities. And Hannah eventually has to have a conversation with Jack to help him understand and set boundaries with Jack so that Jack does his own work. And that's the only way that Hannah is able to get back to um, the happiness that she had in her own work. And I can imagine, and the book doesn't say this, but I can just imagine that when Hannah was frustrated, she probably wasn't doing as great of a job as she had been doing before. She probably wasn't as pleasant to people as she had been before. So when we talk about the fact that we're supposed to be representing more than ourselves, and as Christians, kind of helping people understand what that means, that we have a whole nother life, and we look to a whole nother place for our happiness and our sustenance and all those things. It was probably hard for Hannah to be in that space while she was doing all of these other things for Jack. Again, just bringing it back, that setting boundaries is a great spiritual practice in that it helps us stay focused and grounded and in that place that we can represent who we belong to. Um, I'll just see if anybody has any thoughts on problem number 1.
Yeah, I really enjoyed and I identified with Hannah and Jack. And I think we all can do that. We can do it at work. We can do it at home. And that's why this book, I believe, is so, as you said, so poignant, because we need to set boundaries. I think the top of page 198 is an unlock, perhaps for us all, certainly for me. And this is where you have Hannah's friend Linda is basically saying, well, Linda shrugged. Let me go back. Let me go back to the bottom of 197. It says, you have to stop doing Jack's work, Linda told Hannah. This is Linda talking to her co-worker and friend Hannah. Just do your own work and don't worry about him. But then here it comes, this is the part. But what if things go wrong, Hannah said. And this is where I believe we all fall prey to having an inordinate amount of belief that if you remove us from the situation, then things are going to go wrong. And remember, someone told me early on when I first started working at Ford, you know, if you die, they're not going to stop that assembly line. So don't think of yourself more highly than you ought. So I continue. Linda shrugged. Then they'll blame Jack. It's not your responsibility. Jack will be angry with me for not helping, Hannah said. There's another unlock. You're really concerned about what this coworker will think of you, even though that coworker clearly doesn't care enough about you, but you're caring a lot about that coworker. And then Linda says back, well, let him. And here's the big unlock to me. His anger can't hurt you as much as his poor work habits can.
So thank you, Carlos, because it's really important for us to set boundaries with our coworkers, just like all of the other relationships that we've talked about. So if you happen to find yourself in that position where you have to set some boundaries with coworkers, in that third and fourth paragraph, the author gives some kind of steps for you to follow. I won't really kind of go through them, but he talks about taking responsibility for yourself, and then some other steps that you can take to kind of make sure that you manage that conversation with your coworker to the best of your ability, right? The coworker may still have some concerns or issues. And then he also wants to make sure that we're not taking that, I guess, to the extreme, and recognizing that sometimes your coworkers will need some help. So on page 199, that second paragraph, sometimes they'll genuinely need some support or help. And that's why we have teams, right? So that people don't have to do everything themselves. But sometimes it's about kind of understanding whether it is someone putting their responsibilities onto you or if they just need a little help in this particular situation. And he says that when you do help one of your coworkers in that situation where they just need some support, this is love, and good organizations operate lovingly. So I really thought that was good for us to kind of keep a balance. And so he says, learn to tell the difference by seeing if your giving is helping the other person to become better or worse, because sometimes we can give too much. So again, any quick thoughts there?
All I can say is right.
Okay, so I again trying to kind of manage for time. I will not cover problem 2, but it talks about working a lot of overtime. And sometimes that happens because you're not planning well for the work that you need to get done, or someone else hasn't planned well for the amount of work that you need to do within your working hours. So he again on page 200 near the bottom gives some suggested steps if you ever find yourself in that position where you're working too much overtime. And so I again won't kind of cover that in detail. Problem 3 is about misplaced priorities and whether or not you're spending time on the right types of activities, because we all have a lot of different things that could be pulling at our time throughout any given day. but trying to decide which activities are actually important for you to do and that require your time and energy. Because there are some things maybe that you could delegate, and he says that effective workers do two things really well. They strive to do excellent work, which you can't do if you're trying to do everything. And then you spend your time on the most important things. So what I took away from that is that sometimes you have to spend a little bit of time up front figuring out what the important things are rather than just jumping in. But again, I want to get to some others that I think may be a little bit more pertinent to each of us. So I'll stop really quickly before I get to the one. I want to cover problem 4, difficult coworkers. Is there anything that anyone had on 2 or 3? I will just say, if you're looking in the book, problem 4 is on page 203. And just before I jump into that, managing 2 things he says on the misplaced priorities is that work will grow to fill the time you set aside for it. So if you are just kind of, spending 12 hours a day doing work, you can get 12 hours a day doing work. And so sometimes you have to put limits on good things to keep them good. And hopefully that makes sense, but if not, he covers that on the top of page 203. And I'll jump into the conversation around difficult coworkers. Again, I'm pretty sure all of us have had someone that we've had to kind of have some difficult conversations with in our careers. But he talks about in the second paragraph under that heading, and he says, in this case, you need to remember the law of power. And I just thought this was so good. You have the power to change yourself. Only this right here in the mirror. That's all you can change. You can't change another person, and you must see yourself, not the other person, as the problem. Anybody want to kind of expand on why?
Yeah, we should be examples for Jesus. And I understand difficulties with coworkers. I have difficulties with several coworkers at my job, and so yes, as a human, um, I have angry. I get angry. Um, I get frustrated. I get disappointed with them, and um, I have to pray about that. I have to pray very hard because the devil is out to kill, steal, and destroy.
Amen.
And he will use any one that he can to do to do that task. And so I find myself doing my job and being quiet, but I don't fail the mission of trying to minister unto co-workers when I have alone time, um, and try to get um, people to see that Jesus is the way. Now I don't go to work and trying to preach to nobody, but or nothing like that. But I do have a word, and God gives me a word in my spirit to say something, and so that's my relief from the co-workers that's trying to harm me. That's my getaway. My getaway is the spirit of God that is within me, and that I can have a conversation with other believers at my job. And but it's difficult. It's not impossible to make it through a work day, but sometimes it's challenging. And so it goes back again to whose you are in Christ. Amen.
Mm. Did anyone else want to share before I?
Yeah, tomorrow. If we were at work, everybody at work knows the phrase I always say. Like, I got my hands full of myself. I don't have time uh for people being difficult. I don't push them off, but they do know that I'm not gonna put up, with their nonsense because number one, only person I can control is myself. I can't control what they do. They can go do whatever they want to do. And we all know the first time I do something crazy, I'm gonna be the one that's gonna get pulled in and get
Mhm.
reprimanded or whatever. So I'm gonna do what I'm supposed to do. Let them do what they're gonna do. But I have my hands full with myself. But I'm gonna still show myself friendly to them. But I'm not gonna go out my way for them because those difficult employees are always gonna be there. And we have to keep in mind that sometimes a lot of the underlining reasons for them being difficult have nothing to do with work. It has
Right.
everything to do with their outside lives, or maybe, or they're upset about things that they can't control that they are doing their very best to try to control, and they don't really understand the situation as we're discussing now.
You know, that point you made, Verlin, about you don't know kind of what else is going on in their lives. I try to remind myself of that if somebody's response or emotions seem a little kind of out of whack with what's happening, around us, because we all have, things again outside of work that are going on, and we have to just know that people are human, right? And there are things that trigger people just randomly. You won't know, and maybe they don't even know why they're having the response they have. But sometimes just a little bit of grace, with that difficult coworker can make all the difference. And it may not be that you made a difference or had an impact or been able to share something with them. You may never know, or you may not know for some period of time until they can process and understand it themselves. But we should always strive to, be compassionate and give grace with our difficult coworkers, but also remember the only person we can change is ourselves. So the one last point I wanted to make in that area is that you shouldn't allow anyone else to control your life, your emotions, or your character, because you will always have to be responsible for whatever it is you say or do, like you were mentioning, Berlin. Whatever your response or your reaction, your input to that is, you have to take responsibility for. So don't let anybody push you to do something that is out of your character. So again, kind of managing time, I want to jump to problem 7, because when I was going through this, I was actually in Jamaica on vacation when we were walking through this, and I was reading through the book with another person, and this kind of seemed to really spur some emotion and thought in them, because a lot of people look to work to be way more than what work is supposed to be. And in the grand scheme of things, we talked about how work is a spiritual activity, but also kind of in the very practical, we go to work to learn, to grow, to develop, but also to get paid, right? There's a very practical side to this. But some people add an element of wanting that to also provide them, that component of family, and to be where they go for their friendships and all of this other stuff. And so the author talks about that in the sense of looking to the workplace to provide emotional support like a family. And I think I heard Brother Hunt mention earlier how you can be disappointed at work. I think, bringing those other expectations and things into the workplace around, developing family relationships and looking for this additional support maybe that you didn't get in other places in your life can really set up some tricky situations for you to have to deal with in the workplace. So I have on top of page 206, the last two sentences, or the last sentence in that paragraph, the author says the inherent conflict in this setup is this: the job expects an adult functioning, and the person wants a childhood need met. These differing expectations will inevitably collide. So I just want to not have put somebody on the spot, but can anybody give an example of maybe a coworker or somebody they've known that has kind of had an experience with this and what happened? Maybe they weren't setting boundaries between their work life and their personal life.
Why am I always the one telling I know y'all have dealt with some
Good
of
morning,
that.
Bob.
I just get shocked. Good morning. Sorry I'm late. Of course I had. And it was a mess. You're right. I remember her. God bless her soul. Her and her mom are deceased now, but her, a young lady I worked at the state with. Now, it's a plus if you can find those things at work. That's a plus, but that's not what work is for. So there were a few of us that did have a lot of common interests, and we would hang out and go on trips, and a few of us, okay, afterward, but when I guess someone found out, "Oh, we want to go, they want to go," and this older lady told me, "Vaughn, everybody can't fit in your circle. I don't care how you try to fit them. Them old people talk in parables, and you would get it. We talk straight to our kids, and they still don't get it. But as a result, just to sum it up, we planned this trip. We were in the planning stage. She wanted to go. We made accommodations for her, but of course, you know what happened. She couldn't go. Okay. But she was the only child and ended up telling her mother about it. And the mother took it as we were taking advantage of her adult daughter. No lie to you. So we were planning, Los, one of them New Orleans trips. We done had the bed and breakfast. We got the whole place, like 8 rooms, all of us, okay? And she didn't ever pay. She paid a deposit, which was what? Non-refundable, okay? But then she couldn't pay the rest, so she didn't go. Do you know? I got that. We got there, put our stuff down, and then I went to go run some more errands. Do you know? Okay, I'm not. We in church. I went to go get the liquor. Okay. I come back. Why is her mother's friend, and somebody else sitting up in our bed and breakfast? Not the young lady we worked with. I say, well, how you doing? She said, well, I'm fine. I said, well, what's going on? Was you hanging out with us this weekend or what? And so, because other girls just didn't say nothing to her. You know me, I couldn't do that. That's somebody's mother. And plus, I just want to know what's going on. And so we talked. And man, by the time we straightened that stuff out, that woman said, I'm going to kill that girl. She told me y'all changed the trip to bring boyfriends, and she didn't have a boyfriend, so she wasn't going to feel I said, if we had boyfriends, we wouldn't be up in here together. Who got a boyfriend? Can you go get us? I mean, it was just that. And I could not believe, and I can now because I do see these mothers go a long way with these girls. It's ridiculous. But sometimes I think the parent be reliving through the kids. So sometimes the kid don't even have a chance to grow properly because the mother, I don't know about today, but a lot of the moms take ownership. It's crazy. So I don't even know how far back the counselor really needs to go. So yeah, I have, and we had a talk with her when we got back, and just sat down and talked, and it came out. She never really had friends, but probably not because she was her mom's friend. You got me, and the mom just was. It was ridiculous after we unraveled it, but yeah, bless their heart in the name of Jesus.
Well, Vaughn, I want to thank you for that very entertaining example because that was good. um, the one thing I will mention from the rest of the chapter there, that third paragraph on page 206, the first sentence he says, and this kind of is perfect for what Vaughn was just talking about. He says, you need to make sure you are meeting your needs for support and emotional repair outside of work. Do therapy, counseling, whatever it is you need to do. Don't try to get your childhood needs and all of that, stuff that you need to work through. Get that done at work, because it is going to eventually cause some kind of issue. That's just not what work is for. So again, Carlos, how much more time do we have?
You have 5 minutes.
Oh, goodness. Okay. So I was going to cover taking work-related stress home, but let us jump to the boundaries in the digital age, because there was a lot to cover there. So that's chapter 12. So I'll just kind of run through a couple of things that I thought were important there. So the way that the author sets up chapter 12 is he talks about when he was a child, he used to spend time at the golf course, and there was a doctor that he used to always see at the golf course. And he thought, wow, what a great job, right? He's able to be here at the golf course. And he asked the doctor at one point, just because his curiosity got to be so strong, how the doctor was able to be there at the golf course all the time. And the doctor said to him that I'm actually at work when I'm here because I wear a pager. This pager allows my office to be able to get in contact with me when I'm needed, even though I'm here at the golf course. So I'm actually, in fact, working. And the author thought that was fantastic, right? To be able to be at work and be on the golf course. Well, let us advance a number of years. And that kind of access where, back in the day, it was a pager, and you could, tap on the pager and read whatever the message was, but you still had the option to decide whether to respond or not, right? They would know you got a message, but you had the option to respond or maybe ignore it. I'm going to jump to what he calls Welcome to the On-Call Life on page 210. Because this is about the fact that, we have moved from what used to be when we had phones on the wall at home, or a landline, in our office. That was kind of the only way that people could get in contact with you, other than coming to into your physical presence. So there was some kind of default boundaries, in the sense that if they didn't reach you on that landline, or they didn't catch you in person, they just weren't going to be able to have your attention or be able to communicate with you. So that was, kind of comforting in a way, because it kept you kind of protected. Now that we've moved into this world of, he talks about the progression of moving from having cell phones, and then the internet coming along, and that came with email and all these other things. And now, of course, today we have smartphones, and everything in the world on your smartphone, or even on your wrist now, through some of our smartwatches. And that actually does give people a lot more access to you than we used to have, and that people can send inquiries to you any time of the day or night. And if you haven't silenced your phone, or kind of put some boundaries in place, there's literally 24-hour access to you, or the attempt to access you. If you guys couldn't tell, I'm getting a little nervous with this 5 minutes, because there was just so much in this part to talk about. And then I'm trying to look at my notes. So there was an example where he talked about there being his daughters and the principal putting some rules in place around social media in school. And of course, social media has its place. And so this is on page 212, where he talks about choosing freedom and avoiding destruction. And
Mark, go ahead and take 10 since Vaughn was late.
Okay. Thanks, Vaughn. And so
hey, no problem, anytime.
So he talks about the fact that this principal of a middle school put a very rigid, broad rule in place that no student in that school could have social media accounts. Now that seems to be a little far overreaching, right? And so the author talked about how his teen daughters and how he felt about, that being the rule, because it not only impacted their school environment, it impacted their home environment because they could not have social media accounts. And that's normally a decision that parents make. So I was going to ask here how people feel about having absolute rules in place like those that the principal set, and whether or not you set any rules for your children, absolute rules for your children regarding mobile phones or social media accounts or anything like that. Anyone want to share?
Y'all wasting time. Okay, yes. I have rules in place with my children. My children are not allowed any smartphones until they were at least 13 or 14. And Charlie, he catches on to things all the time. I'm not a social media expert. So I had mentors in place to monitor those accounts because that's my kid is smarter than me. I'm not ashamed to admit that. And luckily, mine were really slow. Like they don't really have a digital print. Trey does not do social media at all. Wallace, he's like, I don't do social media. Now Hunter will, but not much. And then the people I have now, Charlie he watches over them, but you know, I don't do that because I just think sometimes when you're dealing with stuff that's over your head, it can be dangerous, and we have seen the results of that.
Right. So, Vaughn, you mentioned that some of our children are smarter than us with this digital age and social media. I was under the impression that my son didn't have social media accounts. He's not very social in person. Well, I was shocked to find out that not only does he have one or two, he has multiple under multiple names.
I believe.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing when you start to kind of think about monitoring and talking about monitoring our children in social media. I also want to mention one of the things that I skipped was a conversation about date night and how technology is impacting relationships and then just even time that we have with our families. And one of the reasons I wanted to mention that is because on page 215, the author talks about the header is keeping the good in and the bad out. Because not all things with technology or this digital age are bad, right? There are so many advantages we have now because there are times where we need to know things more immediately than getting back to your landline phone and listening to the voicemails, because our children are out in the world doing all kinds of activities, and if something is going on with them, now we can get a text message and say, hey, we've taken your child to the doctor because they were having something happen, or my daughter's in summer camp, and they'll give me a call and say she was being silly and walked into the wall because she wasn't watching where she was going, and she has a big knot on her head, just different things like that. So there are some reasons why it's a really good thing for us to have this access. But in that section, he talks about we are called to be free, but with this caution. Do not use your freedom to indulge the flesh, rather serve one another humbly in love. And what he's talking about is when you put those boundaries in place, it's meant to protect the fact that you have some freedoms, right? The freedom is to kind of engage and to talk with people and to kind of share all this information. But there need to be some boundaries on that because it can get out of control and start to impact your relationships, your personal relationships. And he even talks about where there might be, he calls it pain or misery in your relationships, that you have to make rules to ensure those things don't happen. So that's one of the reasons I kind of pointed back to the date night relationship or section, is because the example he gave there was a wife talking about how they would never be able to be like kind of just a really nice, quiet date night because her husband was always checking his phone. So to put a rule in place that, no phones come on date night or whatever that might be, so that you're still able to have the freedom to enjoy that person in person while you're there. The author also gives a number of things that we need to do with teens, like Vaughn and I were speaking about just a little while ago. And he says you begin with trust and treat privacy as a privilege. So we're moving into like page 219 and 220. And he gives this thought process around you get as much freedom, and this is for the teen, you get as much freedom as you can be responsible with and are able to use. So that takes a little bit of us engaging and understanding our children and what they can actually handle with regard to these smartphones and all these social media accounts, because you hear that children are being impacted negatively by a lot of what they're seeing and hearing and reading on TikTok and Facebook and Instagram and all these different other things. So he gives a little formula on page 221 that he says, freedom equals responsibility equals love. These three things always have to be equal. You'll get the amount of freedom that you use with responsibility, and responsibility always expresses itself in love. So in other words, it means that you use your freedom only in ways that do not harm yourself or anyone else. And so I think we, as we're having that conversation with our children about technology, we absolutely have to stress to them that we don't want them to be harmed by using it, and we don't want them to harm anybody else by using it. So I'll kind of just jump ahead to the last point I wanted to make, which was a pretty long one, but where he talked about FOMO, the fear of missing out. And that's on the bottom of page 224. That seems to be the reason why we're constantly looking at our phones. And so I talked about that immediate access being good. This can be the downside of that, having immediate access, or always able to kind of check in and see what's happening, because people get really concerned about not knowing what's the latest thing is happening 5 minutes after it's happened. And so he also talks about the fact that always checking your smartphone or being involved with digital technology can keep you away from building personal relationships, being in person, face to face, having a physical conversation with someone. And that is always, of course, I think the should be the priority. And so he gives some tips on overcoming FOMO on pages 228 and 229. But what I was thinking about this and saying, our God is a relational being. He's a relational God, right? And we're built for relationships. I found that the way that I learn most is through challenges in my relationships, or the way that people express things to me in relationships. I've learned to be really calm and patient with people. I've learned to love people in a different way, from just being able to have those one-to-one conversations and be physically present to receive and understand how someone is feeling in a particular moment in time. He talks about synchronous and asynchronous communication, which is really important, whether or not we're sending emails and texts and all these kinds of things, and how they can be misunderstood, versus having a conversation where somebody can hear your voice and the intonations and your emotion that comes behind that and what that does. And he says, when in doubt, you always default to face-to-face communication. And he gives a number of reasons why on pages like 234 and 235. And the last point I want to make is, he says, one of the greatest boundaries you can create to stay healthy in the digital world is to have a full life. So not sit around checking what's happening in this virtual world, but actually going out and living and engaging with people, and making sure that you are fulfilled and doing all the things that we as Christians are tasked with doing on our Master's behalf. So I'll stop there. I don't know, Carlos, if there's time for anybody to add something as I kind of ran through the digital piece, but just want to be respectful of time.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I think we have time for, you can still go for your questions and answers.
Okay, so does anybody have anything they wanted to chat about in the digital piece? I know I ran through that pretty quickly.
Of course I do. I believe everything you say. We allow these devices to I guess we think they can substitute a real person. And what we see is the more people rely on this digital, the more broken down relationships are. No matter how quick you get the information, what's gonna happen is gonna happen. Remember back in the day, they didn't even have two cans. If something happened, you got the word, but we put too much trust in them, and then they got us relying on them. We don't even know anybody's phone number no more. Barely know our own. So I agree. Sometimes you just got to put it down. We have no technology Tuesdays in my house. Tuesdays, no technology. Period. And you did an awesome job. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne. Yvonne, did you have something to share?
I did. First of all, great lesson. Thank you for your preparation, Tamara. You did an awesome job engaging everybody and keeping the conversation flowing. I just wanted to say in regards to this technology that we have to be ever vigilant, even as bad as it is now. And, I'll admit I get caught up myself on being on my smartphone and social media. But I'm not sure if everybody's aware of where the future is heading. You may be aware that Facebook recently changed its name to Meta. Right, Meta is the parent company of Facebook, and they're currently developing this thing called the metaverse, which is like this alternative reality. So it's like the internet on steroids. Like it's a mixture of virtual reality and the internet, and I think it's, just like the book said, there's some positives that come along with this. There's also some big negatives. I think once this metaverse really pops off, we've got to be ever vigilant to, stay grounded in the real world, because from what I understand with the metaverse, it's almost like these digital headsets are already out, these binoculars where like you see everything in like a virtual reality sense, and they're actually already starting to I don't get it, but they're selling property in the metaverse, like this virtual property. You've got your digital avatars. You can pay for clothes for your avatars, and I mean, it's a big money sink, but it's starting to catch on, and I think a lot of transactions and different things will begin to happen in the metaverse, and if we're not careful, we will find ourselves just like everybody's glued to their smartphones now. You're going to see people walking around with these headsets on in virtual reality for the vast majority of the day. So, I just say that to stay on guard. Don't get sunk into that. Try to, like you said, maintain real relationships, cultivate real relationships face to face with people, because the way that these technology tycoons are trying to sway things is taking us in a whole other direction.
Thank you, Yvonne. I think, Carlos, we are probably done. Did anyone else have any comments or thoughts on the lesson?
Great lesson tomorrow.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, great lesson tomorrow. Definitely blessed by your teaching. It just encouraged me, basically about putting in the work. We just put in the work to be diligent, and to be diligent as a believer. Be kind, be kinder, and know that it's not about us, but it's about God. And so I love that. I love the lesson. Great job.
Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Tamara. Wonderful lesson. I knew it would be so informative, and I know I could hear your voice quivering a little bit before, and you powered through whatever situation you were dealing with at the beginning. And this is the thing about teaching, right? I mean, we're called to teach, and so we've taught being sick, we've taught being upset, we've taught just not feeling like teaching, we've taught being tired, we've taught coming home from trips, and we've taught also being this morning being a little emotional full, and we invite you to let us know what's going on with you afterwards. Give myself or Yvonne a call if you need us to walk with you through whatever it is. And if not, we'll certainly be keeping you in our prayers as we wrap up today. But thank you so much for teaching us. We learned a lot about how to better deal with some coworker experiences, and we also learned to be ever vigilant with our online activities. So thank you so much, Tamara.
You're welcome.
As we move to next steps, so what are we dealing with next? Let me share my screen here. And let's see. You all tell me, can you see this PowerPoint?
Not yet, but oh,
Now
there it
can.
is. Yes.
Is it coming?
Yes, it's on the screen.
All right, cool. So you see how we're just soldiering through this boundary series, and next week we still need some. Oh man, that's gonna be a great one to teach and to learn from. Does anyone want to volunteer for the God and You segment next Sunday? Well, continue to be prayerful about it. Really want someone to volunteer for this one because Yvonne and I are going to be very busy next Sunday, perhaps, and then in a couple weeks we're going to be wrapping up anyway. So it's always good to hear a different teacher as this morning. Be prayerful about it.
Yeah, a new teacher. We're going to pray for one of these new teachers to step up.
Yeah, come on in, come on in. And it doesn't matter, young or old, young in the ministry or old. I mean, it doesn't matter. So be prayerful about that.
Carlos,
Yes, ma'am.
If you don't find anyone else, just let me know and I'll do. I would love to do it when it's not an emotional time.
You did a wonderful job, sister. You did a wonderful job.
Beautiful job.
Yeah. Good job, Miss Tamara. Yeah, we love you, and we love that you were vigilant, even though you had some emotions on you this morning. Bless God for you. Thank God for you.
And save your notes, because I would be interested in seeing all the stuff we didn't get to. So maybe we could discuss that on another day or something, but I would be very interested in it.
Okay.
So rich. Thank you, sis. So yeah, so if no one else volunteers for July 31st, we will have a second part of Dr. Garrett. We look forward to that. Now, and then you notice on here, let's go to the next slide. Okay, that didn't work. Let's see if I can advance this way. Did that work? Can you see the next slide?
Nothing's changed yet.
If I do this, is it on this screen?
It says upcoming.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All right. So, hey, something to celebrate. I just checked the mail this morning. We were granted our 501c3 status, Lighthouse Marriage Ministries.
Amen.
Woo-hoo!
Oh, amen.
That's a
Praise
big deal.
God.
I've done that process. That's a lot.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
And we were able to get it. Bless God, and it's retroactive till June 2022. So all of those offerings that you gave for the Under the Bridge, you can write those off on your taxes, and we will be giving you our
Bless your
EIN number and everything else. So we are official, y'all.
Amen.
Congratulations.
Yes, the black folks that know how to handle business in the name of Jesus.
Amen.
Amen. Second,
Now,
so
y'all know I meant that. No pun intended. I really
I
meant
hear
that.
you. I hear you. We got stories. I know we got stories. But because of those stories that we have, we gonna run this business with God's help.
Amen.
All right?
Amen. And I'm with you. I'm not afraid. I'm with you. I'm with you on that.
So the second one is running this business. So tomorrow, next Sunday, whoever it is, we're gonna ask them to teach for 45 minutes. I know that's even more pressure on us instead of an hour, because that last 15 minutes, we're gonna have our first trustee board meeting. Everyone's welcome. This is an open to members, open even to non-members. Everybody, you can see what's going on with the ins and outs of every penny as it moves within and without Lighthouse Marriage Ministry. It will be totally open. We are not in this. Clearly, we didn't get in this to make money off of this ministry. There's a whole bunch of other ways to make money. And to our way of thinking, as Yvonne's and mine, this ain't the way to, this ain't our path to money. This is our path to giving. So we're just gonna be open about it. Every penny that's moved in here, you all will be able to see it. Yvonne, I don't know if you were asking some questions about trustee board members.
Oh, I just wanted to make sure everybody knows that, if you have a desire to be on the Lighthouse Marriage Ministry board, you are more than welcome. It is an open invitation for anybody that would like to be involved and wants to serve.
Yvonne, are there
Yep.
any
You know
criteria?
I do.
Are there any criteria you have to meet?
And the criteria has to be set. So we still have yet to have our first board meeting. And if the board agrees, I think one criteria is going to be you have to be apt to teach. I mean, this is a teaching ministry. So I believe that'll be one. And then besides that, no, I don't know. We don't have any criteria set yet. We have to set them tomorrow. Yeah.
I'll be interested in being involved, and we'll talk more later.
Yes, we will. Yes, you are. All right.
You know me, I got a question, but I want to be involved.
If we have answers,
We're excited.
and just like the answer I gave to Tamara just now, if we don't have the answers, we're gonna make up the answers. We're just starting out, and we'll figure it out together in prayer and
Yeah,
with
we'll
God's help.
figure it out.
Yep, we'll figure it out. All right, third item. Time for us to go and do again under this bridge. We're gonna do this August 7th. Yvonne, what planning? What do we need to do to get this thing to happen for August 7th?
Just mark your calendar. I will send out a sign up genius like I always do. You can sign up for what you want to bring. And I'll send out the location. We usually meet, I think the name of the place is the Cajun Spot. It's in Houston, and I'll send out that address as well. But there's a tent city right near that restaurant that we usually go serve at. So typical things, I mean, you'll see it on sign up list, but typical things: toiletries, non-perishable foods, waters, juices, underwear, maybe some, sometimes they'll need some new shoes, hygiene products. So,
And a rake. We gotta get a rake this time too.
okay.
Right, Vero?
That is correct.
Also, just a suggestion, maybe we should like switch up the spot every now and then.
All right. Jared made a good suggestion. Maybe we change up the mission field every now and then. Lord knows there's multiple.
There's plenty of them. You right. Thank you, Jared. It's bad to love, baby.
Because I noticed one down there on Travis as well. Anyway, and you can name about 5 or 6 anyway. I know the whole. Yeah, there's multiple mission fields. Thank you for that, son. All right, back to the schedule. Then we have the next thing is, hey, oh man, Sister Hunt's not on. But anyway, it's time. We haven't done a fellowship, a fun fellowship in a long time, y'all. What say you?
I think it's time. I was thinking we do one next month. Maybe the 2nd or 3rd weekend in August, maybe.
We need one.
Something that's probably inside, huh? I know we've done dancing, we've done bowling, we've done painting, we've done finger popping, we've done all kind of stuff. So anyway, I'll leave that to you. I'll leave that to you, Yvonne, and whoever else. We need to know when, what, and where. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Queenie, for prayers.
Oh, Carlos, I don't know who's controlling the screen, but maybe turn off the recording.
Oh, my bad. Thank you.
Thanks, Tamara. With that, we'll open it up for prayer requests or testimonies.